I concluded that Franklin passed away as the result of suffocation. That is a accidental death. It is one of the most common accidental deaths for children of his age, which is about 5 months. Just youngsters from several weeks after birth through a year or so can get into situations where they can't breathe for one reason or another, and suffer either life-threatening illness and end up handicapped or actually die. But that's what happened to Franklin. He was sitting, but he wasn't sitting in his dad's lap. He was sitting on the couch, and being 5 months old and a little bit restless, he was able to move around, but he wasn't able to get himself out of what he slipped into. And he slipped into a face-down position on the couch and wasn't able to get his face moved over far enough to be able to breathe adequately.
Okay, it's gonna be Franklin's first taste of the ocean.
There you go, buddy.
Hi, baby.
How you doing, buddy? I see your head.
In the early morning hours, while his family was on vacation, and he was placed on a couch in the corner, so he was kind of propped up like he had been on many, many occasions recently while they were on vacation. And his dad was in the other room setting up a number of bottles so he could be fed through the day. And when his dad came back, Franklin had fallen over and his face was in the couch pillow and he couldn't breathe. To the point that he wasn't breathing, his heart wasn't beating, and the family started to try to revive him. They called 911 immediately. 911 sent rescue. Everything they could do was done. They were successful in getting his heart to start, but they were not successful in getting enough oxygen to his brain, to his whole brain. This is a photograph of the living room of the third floor of the vacation home. And this particular one has a baby bottle that has some formula in it, and it is a very important part of this story.
Why is it important?
Because the child was found on this couch with his face down and unable to breathe. It was not immediately recognized that he was unable to breathe. It appeared at first that he was simply sleeping. So there was no report of the baby suffocating. There was a report of the baby being found down and found limp, and that was the way the history of the events started out. But if anyone asked specifically, how was he found, asked for details, they would realize he was found face down in the couch. In this particular case, the history is of suffocation. The findings are consistent with suffocation, and so that seems to me to be the best fit. For other people who are not as aware of how very important history is, the findings are what's most important. What was left of his brain was just devastated, just terribly damaged by the lack of oxygen. Global hypoxic ischemia is devastation, is terrible injury of the entire brain as the result of lack of oxygen and lack of circulation. Yes, Dr. Gunther found global hypoxic ischemia, and so did I. I looked at the same thing she looked at, and so I find it too. It has more than one cause.
What was the cause in this case?
Suffocation. The global hypoxic ischemic injury could be identified at autopsy, and it was attributed to child abuse because they relied on the triad of the brain swelling, the subdural hemorrhage, and the retinal hemorrhages, and didn't have the information about the history. We have the information about the history. Our understanding of what happened to Franklin has a better foundation. Suffocation. The child was unable to breathe because he had his face in the couch pillow or the couch itself, so he suffocated. It caused the retinal hemorrhages, it caused the subdural, and it caused the terrible brain swelling. The brain swelling led to his death. He did not survive, that he was never going to be able to breathe. Too many folks are very positive that if there's a triad, there's abuse. In some parts of the world, that has started to get looked at pretty hard. And in Europe, there was a study that showed that there were a particular set of cases believed to be abuse on the basis of triad, and all but one of those cases were shown not to be abuse, which means that all of the folks who had been accused were innocent. There just isn't any one finding that is good enough to say, this is it, this is child abuse. You have to have a combination, and the most important part of the combination is the history. It is completely critical. It is just about the most important thing. If you don't know what the child's name is, that's a problem, but it's not the worst problem. If you don't know exactly how old the child is, that's a problem, but it's not the worst problem. But the event history is what brought about the situation that has led to the death. So you have to know that. that it had not been explored particularly well. Nobody mentioned that he was face down on the couch. Well, was he? Well, yes. Yes. He was okay until he went face down on the couch and stayed there for about 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes. Consistent with is a part of the history. If something could come from one thing or another, we'd try to find the best fit. He told the same story over and over again. He said what happened, what he observed, and he said it over and over again, because that's all he knew. When you're making up lies, you got to remember what you said, and sometimes you don't remember too well what you said. Sometimes you have to add in some other detail because somebody's asked you a question that you haven't covered yet. But when that's what happened, you just say, well, that's what happened. It looks like they dodged the bullet. It looks like things are okay. Nothing bad has happened. It doesn't even become part of the family story until Franklin is dying in the hospital. And at that point, it's mentioned because people are asking, how did he get this broken rib? How did he get this broken rib? I don't know how he got this broken rib. Well, then there was this flip in the seat, and now, as far as the broken rib is concerned, the age of the broken rib is just right for that time frame. Now we've got a story for what happened to his rib a couple of months ago and what looks like a couple of months old. So that's one of the things that is another serious marker of grabbing a kid, squeezing it real hard, and causing rib fractures. But that isn't what happened to Franklin. This is an older injury, and it's unrelated. There was some concern about an abrasion, a scrape on his shoulder. The pictures that were taken of his shoulder didn't show it clearly enough for me to be able to recognize it. Either in the pictures that were taken when he first got to the hospital, they take some photographs of the living child as well as child photographs made after death, and after death was 5 days later, so some healing could have taken place. But the people who tried to revive Franklin in the first place did not see injuries, did not see anything on the surface of his skin, and he wasn't wearing anything but a diaper. The first couple of times that a rectal temperature was taken, there was no blood on the probe, on the temperature probe. By the time the Nightingale crew from Children's Hospital came, they did find some blood on the probe. So by this time, the people have been doing other things, and the child is deathly ill. So you're not being quite as delicate and careful, and Franklin's not reacting to anything. He's not reacting to anything. Diagnosis is a part of the art of medicine. When we go to the doctor, we hope the doctor knows exactly what's the matter with us and exactly what can be done about it. And here's some of that, and have a nice day. But that isn't our experience. We know that doctors, when they're doing a good job, are asking the history, because that's where it comes from. That's where the practice of medicine, and forensic pathology is the practice of medicine. So we have to have history too. The consistent with is a part of the history. If something could come from one thing or another, we'd try to find the best fit and work our way back to what was it from the history, the findings, and the best fit. In this particular case, the history is of suffocation. The findings are consistent with suffocation.